Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Bright Connections. I'm BK. Joining me once again, Mr. Bold himself. Tom, welcome back. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Coach. Thanks for having me. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has. It has been a little while, but I'm glad to have you back and for a perfect episode for you. So
appreciate that. I want to let your viewers know that I've upgraded my iPad holder, so we shouldn't have any issues there.
We shouldn't have the screen going flop.
Correct.
Nice.
Correct.
Very good. We've upgraded. We've improved.
That's it.
That's what we like to do as human beings each and every day, right? Improve.
Correct. My budget increased a little bit since our last show. The zero budget that I have.
Zero budget. Beautiful. I love it. Awesome stuff. So today, with Thursday, November 11th coming up, being Veterans Day, perfect time for Tom to jump in, being a veteran himself. I couldn't think of a better person to jump on and talk about, just in general what Veterans Day means, and maybe share some stories on his past experiences in the military. Just have some fun with it and get his take on being a veteran and being in the military. So to start, Tom, just in general, what's kind of your thoughts on Veterans Day?
Well, my thoughts are with regard to the American citizens, my fellow American citizens that aren't veterans, and hoping that they realize through either education or looking at the internet what actually Veterans Day is, how it came to be back in World War I, right. I believe with the signing of the armistice back November the 11th, I believe 1918. Okay. But for me, those of us that served in the military, this is our day, Veterans Day. I would hope that the rank and file, and I use that affectionately, the rank and file American citizen, if they know of a veteran, would walk up to them and thank them, let them know that they're thinking about them today. Veterans Day is different than Memorial Day. Memorial Day, and these are all Mr. Bold or Tom's opinion now on the 2 days. Memorial Day is for those that have lost their life right. in service of our country. Veterans Day honors all veterans, and that would be living and deceased.
Correct.
The other thing too is you have the families of veterans that sacrifice a lot.
Yeah.
Those, if you haven't been in, you don't know. A marriage in the military takes a lot of work, Coach, to be successful. So I think about the men and women that I've served with. Most of the time it was men. I was in the infantry and I was in the Marines. I don't know how many of your audience would know that I was a Marine. I was a Marine from 1980 through 1984, right out of college, ROTC. Mm-hmm. And I was a Marine officer. So you don't get to meet many Marine officers whenever you're doing something out there in everyday life.
Right.
Most people would assume that you went through boot camp, either Parris Island or Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego. Whereas we as officers, we have officers candidate school of one form or another. And then we all go to the basic school in Quantico. Male, female, no matter what you were going to do in the Marine Corps as a military occupational specialty, we all go to the basic school at Quantico, Virginia for 6 months. And that gives all of us officers, those young lieutenants, an appreciation for what that grunt, that rifleman down at the platoon, squad, and fire team level, what they go through in the mud out there in the field.
Yeah.
And everything in the Marine Corps is predicated on supporting that grunt. And grunt goes, it's male or female, doesn't matter what you are. If you're in the infantry out there at the tip of the spear, you're a grunt. So okay. We were all trained to support that grunt down there with supplies, etc. So I think about the people that I served with and then the people that have come before us, living and deceased. And that's the reason why you and I are here. And be able to do what we're doing right now with the freedom that we have. Right. Where we work, doing this right now on the internet, has all been purchased by those that have come before us in uniform, especially those that have paid the ultimate sacrifice. And again, their main day is Memorial Day in May, and then today or Thursday is for all veterans. In addition to that, prior to Veterans Day, November the 10th, special place in my heart. I don't know if you're aware of that. It's the Marine Corps birthday.
I did not.
So the Marine Corps was founded in 1775 on November the 10th in Tun Tavern, Pennsylvania. So
1775, huh?
That is correct. So that's my thoughts on Veterans Day itself. The ones that I think deserve. So here's where we stand, Coach, with regard to the veterans. And I was just thinking about this prior to coming on the show. For World War II veterans, I don't believe that there is an American alive now that served in World War I. World War II veterans would be the oldest veterans that we have. Mm-hmm. We're coming up on the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor next month.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, a month from today will be the 80th anniversary. How about that, Coach?
Yeah.
How about that?
You're on your dates right now. Yep.
So the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor and the entrance of the United States formally into World War II.
Correct. Even
the youngest individual that may have snuck into the military back then because they wanted to join the fight, let's say, and this is definitely an exaggeration, but let's say a 10-year-old looked like they were 17 or 18. That 10-year-old would be 90 years old,
right?
89 going on 90. Right. So I'll be more realistic then. There were kids, I believe, that snuck in at 15, 16 or 17. You're talking about now the oldest 96. Or the youngest veteran, 95.
Yeah.
So if they haven't all passed, we're getting very close to not having that greatest generation anymore.
Yeah.
They and the ones that followed them, especially the Vietnam vets who I think got short shrifted because of the anti-war sentiment back in the 60s and in the early 70s. They really got short shrifted when they came back home, and they deserve special attention on Veterans Day. Okay. So if you know the Vietnam vet, your viewers, and if you can identify one, just their term is welcome home, because they didn't get a true welcome home like you see the young men and women getting it today.
Okay.
So just keep that in mind. My time again was peacetime, 80 through 84, but I had some of my contemporaries did the first Desert Storm, and then they would have been senior officers when 9/11 happened. And speaking of that, all the young men and women that went in after 9/11, they're coming to the end. If they stayed in, they're coming to the end of their 20, believe it or not, Coach, they're coming to the end of their 20-year career.
20 years. That's
how fast time. That's how fast time flies. We've talked about that at work. Yeah. Where does the time go?
I don't know.
That's a career.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the kids that went in after 9/11.
Right.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. 20 years. Wow. Yeah, you're right.
And I'll leave you with that. So that's where I stand with regard to Veterans Day.
Okay. I appreciate that, Tom. I appreciate that opinion. So maybe jump into a little history lesson for those that don't know. You mentioned at the very beginning there was a armistice that was signed.
Right, for ending World War I, and it was on November the 11th, at the 11th hour on the 11th day of November, 1918. And it just, I don't know if off the top of my head, whether or not Veterans Day, it just happened to fall that way, or they created it to honor the veterans.
That was my
on that particular day in November.
Right, that was my next question. They have connection or not, or is it just coincidence? I would have to imagine there's some kind of connection there, right?
They thought that out.
That's too perfect to be just a coincidence.
And then you have, going back again, Veterans Day, you have the Tomb of the Unknown for those that are unidentified throughout the American military history, where that they represent all those unknowns. And it's very difficult now to have an actual unknown. They identified all the deceased from the Vietnam era and anything past Vietnam. Yes. They had one that they did inter at the Tomb of the Unknowns in Arlington Cemetery, but DNA found his family or identified him through DNA. So it took a heck of a long time. So they had to disinter him, and they buried him elsewhere.
So they're still to this day able to determine identity for people who passed away many years ago.
Yeah, we don't talk about it too much, you and I, but the DNA is just amazing. I mean, they have identified, I guess, through records, people that are the deceased that are unidentified, bodies not recovered. But again, when you're talking World War I, they were probably buried everywhere over there, shallow graves. Yeah. And, you have minimal, and it's just coming across now by luck or happenstance that you come across a body, from that time frame over there. Same with World War II, could be buried anywhere over there in Europe, and in American, deceased, and then Korea, the same thing. And each war still has their unaccounted fors. As you see, MIAs from Vietnam are still out there.
That's crazy.
So again, they have teams that go out. For example, for World War II, you have planes that went down in the Pacific Islands, and I think there is an entity within the United States government that when they're given a location, they actually go out there and try to find the remains of the individuals from an air crash. So
Wow.
Heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Heavy stuff. And again, the thought on Veterans Day is freedom isn't free. And I digress. One of the finest statements that I've seen with regard to remembrance is the Bethel Park Memorial here in Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. Sacrifice is meaningless without remembrance. And that's inscribed on the stones there at the Veterans Memorial in Bethel Park. Sacrifice is meaningless without remembrance.
Yeah, I mean, people's memory of people is honestly one of the most important, if not the most important thing of a person's life. Just honoring somebody's memory and remembering them how they were, even when they pass is huge. It's huge.
Otherwise, they're gone for eternity.
Exactly.
Eternity's a long time.
It sure is.
And you have, again, as we've chatted now, the men and women of that greatest generation, they're dying off. So people remembering Pearl Harbor, you're having fewer and fewer people now remembering Pearl Harbor.
Other than just the stories that they shared.
Exactly.
And people that remember those stories. Yeah.
I would encourage your audience, if they have a veteran family member, especially an old timer, to try to draw out the stories, get them on tape.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's a good point.
For posterity, for their grandchildren down the road, generations to come, to see what granddad or grandma did back in the war.
Absolutely. With all the digital tech that we have nowadays, there's no reason why stories shouldn't be recorded, to remember them. Easier to remember.
They jump on an iPhone whenever you're talking to grandpap.
Absolutely.
You put the iPhone on.
Yeah.
Unless you smack, until he says, stop that, turn that off.
Yeah. Says, I don't want you using that stuff around me. I'm talking to you.
Grandpap's place is where modern technology goes to die.
Yes, right.
I digress.
No, that's good. That's good. So let's get a little background on you, Tom. I know at the very beginning there, again, you mentioned you were in the Marines for 4 years, from 80 to 84.
Correct.
And you said that you were an officer. So you didn't just jump straight to being an officer, correct? You had to go through being that grunt for a little while, or am I incorrect in saying that?
No, I didn't have to be enlisted to go and become an officer through the program that I did. I came out of high school in 76. Mm-hmm. I wanted to help my background. Why did I go into the Marine Corps? I wanted to help mom and dad pay for college. I wanted to get an ROT. I wasn't that top 10% to get into one of the academies back then. Okay. Even though I thought I was hot stuff, I was so average. It was over the years, I just learned how average I was when it came to trying to get into one of the service academies. Yeah. I don't know how much you know about them, but about 10,000 kids apply for each academy each year. Okay. And out of the 10,000 applicants, that's weeded out or weaned down to 1,000 kids go in. Wow. So your top 10% of the, and then I look at the stats of people that got in. I don't know how I did that, but I did. And my SAT scores were way, average. Average. I was just average. So I figured the ROTC route was the way to go. I wanted to go into the service regardless, Coach, because I was a true believer in the country. This was post-Vietnam. So the route or the road that my contemporaries and I took was that road less traveled. You've heard that statement. You take the road less traveled. Yep. The draft had ended in 73. Okay. I did not have a draft card. People that were 2 years younger than me or 3 or 4 years younger than me, they had draft cards or possible draft. So the draft ended and it became all volunteer, except, the ones that were in. Mm-hmm. But post 1973, if you went into the military, it was a volunteer. And I wanted to go to college. That was a given. Back then, at least in my opinion, college was the next step after high school. It was just given I was going to go to college. It was just a matter of where I would go, where I had the best chance of getting a ROTC scholarship, again, to help mom and dad pay. I then chose the Marines because I figured, well, first of all, that was the toughest group back then, in my opinion, to get into in general. And I figured that I may have the best chance of getting a scholarship going into the Marines. And it did work out that way. I was still too average for a 4-year ROT. There's 4-year, 3-year, 2-year, maybe even 1-year scholarships now.
Okay.
But back in my day, there were 4, 3, and maybe 2-year scholarships. 4-year, you were just one step. Again, you had kids that were getting appointments to the academies and also getting 4-year ROTC scholarships, and they had to make a decision as to what they wanted to do.
Right.
You were committed to about 6 years, if not more, if you went to the academies, whereas you had a 4-year commitment through the ROTC. And the ROTC, you could choose your college.
Okay.
Whereas with the academies, you had to go where the academies were. But I had buddies at VMI where I attended that had the choice. They had an appointment to an academy, and they were 4-year ROTC scholarship kids, and they made the choice to go to VMI instead of going to the academies. I still question them to this day whenever we chat. I say, I can't believe, because I know how much I wanted it.
Yeah, right.
And I just admired them having the choice, because the 4 years, the only thing the 4-year didn't do for you is it didn't pay room and board.
Okay.
So the family still, or you had to come up with room and board. It paid for tuition and books and some other, it gave you a stipend per month.
Okay.
But so I went in, I worked my senior year in the post office back home in Johnstown and saved a lot of money and was able to help mom and dad defray some of the costs of that first year.
Yeah.
And then the ROTC unit at VMI, I say VMI, it's Virginia Military Institute, and that was located in Lexington, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back, the history of that. It had been in the news because of its Civil War connections.
Okay.
But I had never seen the school until the day before. It was called matriculation. Stunned, we went up onto the parade ground. I looked at the barracks. The sun was shining off the barracks. The next morning I couldn't eat. I was so nervous because then again, I had no idea what the heck I was getting into.
Yeah.
The VMI system had what was called, the first year, you're called a RAT, R-A-T, and you go through the RAT line as an incoming. We weren't referred to as freshmen. We were referred to as RATs. And at VMI, the class system, the class is everything, not necessarily the score, your company, because you were broken down into companies.
Okay.
So at the academies, the company, or I can't remember what they have as at the Naval Academy, but the Air Force Academy, West Point, broken down by companies, and you live together as companies. Now we live together as classes for the most part. You roomed with your class, and you had different levels in the barracks. Our barracks where I lived my 4 years at college dated back to the Civil War. And I slept on one of those old style Army cots that had the springs, metal. We had to fold them up every morning.
Wow.
I had a foam mattress about 4 or 6 inches thick. You had to roll that up. We called those hays because they look like if you picture a hay roll out in the field, that's what our beds looked like.
Wow.
So you had to roll that up. I went to school 6 days a week for 4 years. I went to school on Saturday. I had classes on Saturday every year.
Wow.
And I took 18 credits every semester except the last one, where I had to take 21. You heard the term, I think, from the movie Apollo 13, where failure wasn't an option. Well, for me, Mr. Bold, not graduating on time was not an option.
Not an option.
Not an option. So go ahead.
I was just going to say highly motivated.
Had to be.
Yep.
Had to be. And I was lucky enough to get a 3-year Navy scholarship. I thank the ROTC program there at VMI. The Marine officers there were behind me 100%, helped me get that 3-year scholarship, so that when you graduate, when you're on a scholarship, you come out of VMI with what's called a regular commission. You're commissioned to second lieutenant on one day, and then you have the actual college graduation where you're given your degree the next day or within a couple of days of that. So you're commissioned as an officer, you become a second lieutenant, which is the low man on the totem pole of the officer ranks in the United States military.
Okay.
And we had what's called a regular commission, which means that we could have been in, as long as we didn't mess up, we could have been in for those 20 years. Whereas a reserve officer, they're in for 3 or 4 years, and then they have to be given an opportunity to call what to do what's called augmenting to the regular Marine Corps or regular Army. And then they go with the same as I would have been, where they could have stayed in for 20 years unless something happened that drove them out. My VMI time was very, very good. One of the things that VMI helped me with, other than preparing me to do stuff, a lot of stuff in a short period of time, that rat line, it was just, wow. It was just bang, cold water in the face, yelling, screaming, getting worked out for the first. So that was August through January. August through January, we were in what's called the rat line.
Wow.
So they were able to give us, and the seniors drove that. So we were, the system there was called the Dyke system, DYKE. And the Dyke system was a mentoring system where the senior or first classman mentored a freshman or a rat to keep him on the straight and narrow, help him negotiate the VMI system until he grasped it on his own. That's what my first classman helped me do. And the honor system there was the finest working honor system in the nation. I believe it still is. It was a single sanction system. You didn't lie, cheat, or steal, nor tolerate anybody that did. If you didn't turn somebody in when you know that they did a honor court violation, you were, in the eyes of the institute, you were as guilty as they were.
Right.
So I graduated with a 2.4095 GPA. Why do I remember that, Coach? I have no idea. Going out that far in my GPA, I earned every point of that 2.4095. I earned every point of that decimal point, because in the VMI system, if you and I were doing homework, like right now, if this was a homework project, and I did something wrong and you pointed it out to me, whenever I turned in the project, I would have had to put your name down, help receive, from you. And then the professor would take into account the level of help. If somebody pointed out, hey, Tom, you put that decimal point one too far. They pointed that out. I had to put that on my math homework. You know, Cadet Schmuckatelli pointed out that I had the decimal point in the wrong spot. And again, it was either penalized for that or not. If he helped you on 50%, you know, the professor would whack you on that one, you know, take you down. But again, we had all of our work was our own. That was the big thing there. And that developed that integrity in me.
Yeah. That sounds like a bit. Sounds like a bit.
It was. It also taught me after the rat year, I became a third, second, and first classman as you advanced to senior. So a third is a sophomore, second is a junior, first is a senior. So as a third classman, I was what was called a cadre corporal, where I came back early before the next set of rats came in, and I instructed them on the military bearings, what they needed to do to learn how to march, the manual of arms, etc. So that allowed me to learn how to get up in front of people and instruct. And I take from that, and I just built on that each year from that. That helped me when I got into the Marines to be able to be in front of my men and instruct. I think I'm a halfway decent instructor.
Yeah, I
think I trained them well at work. So, and that's just carried over.
So even as a sophomore, you already jumped in and started taking a leadership type role.
That's correct. Yeah, you got rank. They called it getting rank. So I was a cadre. I was a corporal as a sophomore or third classman. Yeah. I was a master sergeant as a second classman, and then I was a cadet first lieutenant as a senior or first classman, and as I was the company executive officer for Bravo Company during my first class year, and the executive officer was in charge of the new cadets or the rats. So I had the rats as a company by themselves until we integrated them into what was called the old corps.
Wow.
So I carried after my sophomore third class year, I carried a saber instead of a rifle. So my junior year, second class year, and first class year, I carried a saber. Wow. for ceremonial purposes.
Right.
And our uniform was slightly different with the way we dressed out. Whenever we put our uniforms on and put on and I have a photo here. As a matter of fact, I'm going to walk with my new. So I'm challenged here a little bit. That's actually my diploma right there.
Okay.
And it's an actual sheepskin. You know how people talk about getting their sheepskin? I don't know. Maybe you're too young for that.
I think I might be. Yeah.
Yeah. So on That photo right there, that's me getting my diploma. So, and that's what our uniform looked like as a cadet officer. How can you see that? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
So there's a sash there, and then I have my saber.
I see the saber. Yeah.
So what happens with that, Coach, is we call, whenever we get into uniform, those white straps, those are, it was called getting diked out. So you had your roommates helping you put on the cross straps, your belt, and it was getting diked out. So that was the program and the terminology that we used there, and they still do it to this day. And then I had to learn how to step off with the band so that all of my people were in step. So you learn to march. That was kind of cute then when you come out, because when you learn how to do change step, that's one of the commands in the military and at VMI. So if you and I were walking, and maybe I did this to you in our parking lot there, I could do change step. I could just change step 15 times in a row and not miss a beat. Yep. That just comes from practice.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We did do that. I remember doing that with you on our walks on break before.
Yep.
You teach me how to properly step.
All right. And then I was taught by the regular officers there. When we were cadets, there were regular military officers that we came in contact with. And I learned to walk properly, or we didn't walk, we walked in step. We always marched. Whenever you were with a senior officer, you were in step. So I would always be, if there was somebody senior to me, I would be one step to their left and one step behind. And that was just military protocol. So even to this day, with one of the bosses there at work, I'll always make it on the left, and then one step to the left and one step behind.
Really?
That's just in me.
Yeah.
It's ingrained in me. Why are you doing that? And they'll say, why are you doing that? And I say, I was trained that way.
That's my
Folds fallback. I was trained that way.
I was trained.
And then they ask me, hey, why are you this way? And I say, I was trained this way. It's in me. Once you become a Marine, it's just in you.
Yeah.
And you can't, I can't turn it off. It's just, I fall back on it.
Yeah. I mean, that's just like when natural instinct kicks in for people. You just say that's the way you were raised,
Correct.
Raised by your parents. It's the same kind of thing. It's just ingrained in you.
Now, the system too at VMI and in the Marine Corps, what it also taught me, and this is honest to God's truth, is others over self. There's something bigger than Mr. Bold out there. And that's what you learn. I would, as a Marine officer, you always sacrificed. You make sure your men were taken care of before you took care of yourself. You made sure that they ate, that they were clothed properly before you took care of yourself. So it's others over self. I would take care of you, Coach, before I would worry about myself.
Yep. And
big picture too, is your money safer with me than it is with you. That's the other thing I tell people too. Your money would be safer with me than it is with you.
Yeah. I don't know if too many people would buy into that one.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. Awesome. That's really insightful, Tom. Hearing stories of what you went through, in VMI and everything that was instilled in you and the ranks that you went through. You don't hear a lot of, for me at least, I don't hear a lot of stories like that of what people in the military went through, and obviously I see it in everyday, in you, all the values that were instilled, and everything that you were taught to, like you said, not only be a good person, but to be thinking about others over yourself. And even though I wasn't in the military, I myself do try to live by that. I do try to always put others first before myself. I just think that's the right way to be. I think that's in my eyes, that's how we were meant to live. We were meant to think of others before ourselves.
Yeah. And again, going back to, there's just something bigger than you and me out there.
Yeah.
It's not, my youngest brother taught me, there's others that are out there, and the term is selfish. It's all about me. You get it's the small things. You just look at the dichotomy, the person that puts the shopping cart right in the middle of the aisle and runs a conversation, and you're standing there for 2 minutes being polite, not waiting to go. Hey, they don't care. It's all about me, versus, think about others over self.
Right.
So that's the thing that I think most, if not all, people in the military learn. Again, there's that big picture, and that there's something bigger than you out there.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that we as veterans are very, very good employees. You can see it. I think you've alluded to that in the past. You see my interactions or what I do, at work.
Yeah.
And again, it's not, it's not phony. I mean, it's me, as you said.
Right. Right. Absolutely. So let's take a trip back to Veterans Day then. Now, in the past, has there been anything that you have done, even on Veterans Day? I don't know if veterans necessarily do anything. Like, do you have any type of routine that you do yourself, or do you just reflect mostly?
Well, here's what I like to do. The first thing, and one of the simplest things that all Americans can do, is you put your flag out.
Yes.
So I try to remember, and my mother calls me and reminds me to put my flag out. Tommy, use your flag out. So I try to do that.
She has to remind you, huh?
Right. Just make sure. She called me on Columbus Day to remind me, is your flag out? I said, well, that's not one of those hardcore. I try to get it on the big ones, Memorial Day, 4th of July,
right.
Veterans Day. So I do that. I did march in one Pittsburgh Veterans Day parade years ago. So I did do that. And I participated in events here over the years, nothing recently at Bethel Park, whenever they have ceremonies over at the Veterans Memorial. We have a very fine Veterans Memorial in Bethel Park.
Okay.
And they have ceremonies on Memorial Day and Veterans Day.
Okay, so you've more participated or accepted people's thank you to you more than you had necessarily like a routine yourself.
Correct.
Yeah,
that's correct. And most of the time we're working. So the flag thing is the big thing for me. Okay. Flag. Now, speaking of the flag, that's one of the things that our fellow Americans or fellow citizens could really pay attention to, is that whenever you have your flag out and displayed, a flag that's tattered is called unserviceable, and that flag should be replaced. And a person, I admire them for putting out their flag, the American flag, and displaying it properly. I see a lot of flags in Bethel, which warms my heart as a veteran, really, and all year round, not just on the major holidays. But once a flag becomes unserviceable, it should be replaced. And an unserviceable flag should be retired properly. Right. And there are ways to do that. You can turn in an unserviceable flag to the American Legion, to a Boy Scout troop. And there's a flag plaza down at South Park where they do formal. If anybody wants to go see something that is moving and touching, they should go see a flag retirement ceremony where they burn unserviceable American flags. The first one that I saw, Coach, was when my son was in Boy Scouts out at Heritage. And I think I had tears in my eyes. It was so solemn. And this was Boy Scouts. So the leadership there at Heritage, plus the Scouts themselves, and you're talking 12, 13, 14-year-old boys. It was just a moving experience, honestly. Wow. As a veteran, I couldn't believe how moved I was because of the solemnity in that program. Yeah. Wow. So display your flag properly. If it's out at night, it should be illuminated. Just some small stuff. Okay. A flag displayed at night should be illuminated. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I don't think a lot of people know that stuff. There's a flag code. I think for me, I knew. I think for me, I always thought bring the flag in at night. I don't know that I ever thought of leaving it out overnight. It should, unless it's illuminated. Right. It should come in at dusk. Right. The more you know. That's it. That's why you have me on the show, Coach. That's right. That's right. All this free information. That's all this is. At least in Mr. Gold's opinion. Less I have to look up, more I can hear. That's it. Yeah. But I'm really glad that you have been able to participate and in those ceremonies on Veterans Day as a veteran, and were able to. One other thing, Coach, and this might even be a bright story. I had the honor of taking an Iwo Jima veteran. For those of you in the audience, Iwo Jima was an island in the Pacific that was assaulted by the Marines, a heavy loss of life, 30 days plus of fighting. And it was taken because it had an airstrip or airstrips, and the B-29s that were going over Japan needed a place to land if they were damaged. So they were losing airmen. So and Iwo Jima was an airstrip that the Japanese were using. to send up fighters to intercept the bombers.
Okay.
So, and then a small digression on the Iwo Jima story. There's a Marine veteran that's actually from the Western PA area that's in that famous flag raising. His name was Mike Strank. He was a sergeant, and he's one of the 6 that were in that famous flag raising. And he's from Franklin, Pennsylvania, which is about 3 miles outside of Johnstown.
Okay.
Point of interest.
Yeah. So you said you had the honor to
Yes. I'm sorry. Escort him to a Veterans Day ceremony over at Baldwin High School.
Okay.
And I took some video with me, and his name was Mr. Kanor. And I was telling the juniors and seniors that were in the auditorium, I said, you folks have a rare opportunity. You're looking at, as Mr. Kanor, living history, because I'm showing them the Mount Suribachi there, the big extinct volcano on Iwo Jima.
Mhm.
And when the flag raising happened, the famous flag raising, Mr. Kanor was in an Amtrak, or an amphibious tractor, at the bottom of the mountain.
Wow.
So he was there, saw it go up physically there.
Right.
And you just don't have that whenever
Right.
you talk to, because you're reading about it in a book, or you're
Yeah.
looking at it on a video, but they had living history right there. And I
Wow.
made a point to the kids, that they had that rare opportunity to have a piece of living history right in front of them.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Yeah, and that's another one of those things you can read about stuff, you can watch videos of stuff, but actually seeing or feeling items from history, like that, it's incredible.
Correct.
Incredible. Wow.
And those opportunities are few and far between now,
Absolutely.
as we've discussed.
Yeah. With the greatest generation reaching its end,
Yes.
as you say. Yeah. Wow. So moving more towards your time in the military, just wanted to know if you had some intriguing stories, maybe from your time in ROTC, more in ROTC, or maybe if you were other times in the military, just some stories that you'd like to share.
Sure. The ROTC program, or getting that 3-year scholarship, after my sophomore year, they send the scholarship kids around the country, Marine Corps and Navy wise, to experience all 4 segments of the Naval Service. So in the Naval Service, and I'm only speaking about my time, and it's pretty close to what is happening now. You have an air component, you have a surface component, you have an underwater component, which is the submarines, and then you have the Marine component. So that summer, after my sophomore year, or 3rd class year, I got to go around the country and experience each one of those segments of the Naval Service. Started off flying from Pittsburgh via Chicago down to Texas, and flew jets. I got to fly in the back of a fighter trainer, an A4 Skyhawk,
Wow.
which was pretty wild. Went through, if anybody in your audience has watched the movie Officer and a Gentleman, they have what's called a Dilbert Dunker, where they simulate the plane crashing in the water, the cockpit going inverted in the water, and you have to escape out of that. Rode up an ejection seat trainer, and then actually went out and flew in the back seat. It was a 2-seater trainer type of an A4 Skyhawk. The A4 Skyhawk is a fighter bomber that was actually used in the Vietnam era. And you haven't flown until you've flown in a fighter plane, because it's like being compared to being in a Airbus or a 777, which would be comparable to a bus. The fighters are Lamborghinis, and those darn things just take off and you fly. And the canopy, you're so close to the canopy and the clouds. The clouds are, as you heard people describe sometimes, cotton balls out there. It's just like you want to reach out through the canopy and touch those clouds, because there's not that big gap.
Yeah.
It's just, and he just took off. It was just amazing. The sensation of speed in a fighter versus we move when we're taking off in a regular airliner.
Yeah.
But you really feel it when you're in that smaller fighter aircraft.
Yeah.
So we did that in Texas. Then from Texas, we flew in a regular naval aircraft. We flew over to Charleston, South Carolina. Back then, Charleston was a submarine base, and I got to go out on a submarine for 3 days. It was a ballistic missile submarine, the Francis Scott Key. The best chow in the Navy is on board a submarine. To this day, that's still the case.
Really?
Yep. Back then, the hot thing was a soft serve ice cream machine. Whenever your sub had soft serve ice cream, you were living large.
You
But because of the way
luxury.
Exactly. The way that they were going out, they would go out for weeks or months at a time, 90 days, I think, with the patrols. And they stayed out there. So food was a big thing on board the sub for morale. And we got to go out there for 3 days on the sub, came back in, flew up to Norfolk, Virginia, went out on a Spruance class destroyer. So I was on the surface then, underwater with the sub, on the surface with the destroyer. And then from Norfolk, you have Norfolk and Little Creek. We went over to the Little Creek side of the Norfolk Naval Base, and that's where we played Marine for a week. So I got to do all that.
Played Marine? What do you mean when you say played?
Well,
Marine?
we played Marine, but in with military bearing.
Okay.
There was still a staff NCO there that was in charge of us, and he didn't put up with any crap. So we weren't free there. We weren't frat boys running around Little Creek.
Nice. So going back to the jet, did you get sick or anything at all?
No, but one of the things that we call each other at VMI, whenever your classmate, you don't say, "Hey, classmate, how you doing?" We were called brother rats. So my classmate was a brother rat. So one or two of my brother rats got air sick because of the maneuvers that the pilot was doing.
Yeah.
At that point, I hadn't gotten motion sick yet. Whenever I went to the basic school and we did a simulated landing, and we were only in the Chesapeake Bay, is the first time that I got seasick. And seasick, coach, is the worst feeling that you can have in your life. I describe it to people as, think about the worst flu that you've ever experienced and multiply that by 10, 20, or 30 times. Wow. It was just horrendous. You reeked out. We expelled everything that was in our stomachs. Oh. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah.
And it was the point where, you talk about the dry heaves and stuff, and your body was getting racked up just from that muscular movement. Right. And there was nothing there.
Yeah. I say there's nothing left in there. So it's just doing nothing. Yeah. Wow.
So one guy we were in an Amtrak, that amphibious tractor. I'm digressing. I can't remember where we are now, but this is one of the military stories. This is after commissioning and after BMI. So we're in this Amtrak, 18 to 20 lieutenants, young lieutenants. We had eaten breakfast up at Quantico, and we drove down to Norfolk to go on board ship and then do this simulated landing. So we ate breakfast like normal up at Quantico, drove down. So we had full breakfast in our stomach. We go out in the Amtrak, comes out the back of the ship, Bob's in the water. So the Amtrak, believe it or not, floats. It's several ton, but it floats. It's just like a ship. I guess the buoyancy is compensated. So we're floating, and the Chesapeake Bay had swells. I can't remember how big the swells were, but we're bobbing, and you had the diesel fuel going. So it was diesel. Yeah. The diesel engine's running. We're in there. The diesel fumes are getting to us, and the hatch is closed because of the waves are crashing over top of the Amtrak. So you don't want that. You had 3 crewmen that were regular Marine Corps. And then you had the roughly 18 lieutenants in the back of this Amtrak. Wow. So one of my fellow lieutenants who was closest to the ramp, when the ramp would open up, it's at the rear of the Amtrak. So he's at that end. Somebody starts getting sick in the Amtrak, and he's making fun of it, And then I just remember again, stuff. This is 40 plus years ago. He goes, "Hey, this isn't funny anymore." And then the sign of defeat is, so we're all wearing our old steel pots. So you take off your helmet. The inside the helmet was a plastic liner with the webbing that sits on top of your head. Right. And the metal steel pot is covered by a cloth camouflage piece of material. Yep. So the side, when it got to me, coach, I could just feel it coming. You just feel that welling up. Boom, off goes the helmet. You pop out the inner liner that had the web strapping in it. You unfold your flaps from that camouflage cloth, because that's what keeps it on top of the steel pot. You bring the flaps out, so you have your steel pot sitting there that looks like a bowl. Yeah. And then when you had the heave, you heaved in your steel pot so that you didn't vomit all over the floor of the Amtrak. Right. And that the Amtrackers would have to clean it up. Yep. There was only one guy who was sitting next to me. he had gone to the New York Maritime Academy, so he was used to the tall ships and being on the water.
Yeah.
Didn't affect him at all. I think three lieutenants did not get seasick in that Amtrak. So I'm just worn out from vomiting. I put my head on, this is no kidding. I put my head on his shoulder and I said, Gaucho, I want to die. That's how bad that was.
Wow.
And now I understand in World War II why these guys, both on Normandy and in the Pacific, why they wanted to get off of those landing craft and the Amtraks, because it was just terrible. It was just terrible. I think I'd have rather been on the beach taking fire than going through the seasickness. Wow. And ever since then, Coach, I've been susceptible on the water.
Yeah.
And because even when I was in the Marines and we were going up to do that operation in the Aleutian Islands, I was popping Dramamine whenever it got bad, because I didn't want to get sick in front of my men.
Yeah.
So
wow.
That's a good story there. Eight, they're just amazing. And there's also, there was more than my Amtrak. There was 5, 6, 7 Amtraks. Everybody had the same story.
I was to say, I'm sure everybody was going through the same thing.
We got off they finally got us back on the boat. We never made the landing. We get back up on the boat, unload, drop our puke-filled helmets, dump that out. The Navy wasn't happy about that.
Oh, I'm sure.
We went up on deck, laid in the sun because it was sunny, but the damn waves were smacking us around. We were bobbing like a cork, and laid in the sun, man. That sun was fantastic, and they gave us crackers. That's what I remember to settle our stomachs. Yeah. Then they said, load back up. We're going back in.
We're doing it again.
And the honest to God, Coach. Yeah. And then we actually did the landing. We went straight in. Okay. Couldn't wait to get off, man. Holy cow.
I can imagine.
That was bad. That was bad.
Wow.
But then it's one of those stories, we were all bonded by bobbing in the Chesapeake Bay in October of 1980.
All bonded over the same sickness.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, it was bad, Coach. It was bad.
Oh wow.
No, you got to get me off that subject now.
Okay.
Before
too many memories come up.
Exactly.
Oh
exactly.
Man. So you got any other stories? I believe you said you had some pictures and stuff to share.
Yes. Let me hit you with a couple of from VMI.
Yeah.
I had the opportunity while at VMI. I participated in the inaugural parade for President Carter in January of 1977. And then I was the cadet in charge of the color guard for the opening ceremonies of the 1979 Ryder Cup at Greenbrier in West Virginia.
Wow.
So that was a volunteer thing. I don't know why I picked it. I picked the opening ceremonies. The guys that did the closing ceremonies, there's video of the cadets, my brother Rats that went out there on the closing ceremonies. None of Mr. Bold.
None of the opening ceremony.
I think it was a plot in New York to keep Mr. Bold off TV, even back in my younger days. So those are good stories there from BMI.
Right.
I do have some pictures.
Yeah.
From my military time. This is a shot of some of my men. That was our platoon photo. Some of them had been sent to other duties that weren't in the photograph. Mm-hmm. But I was in charge of roughly 40 people, 3 squads of 13 each.
Okay.
And so that's on Okinawa, 1991. And this is a young Lieutenant Gellis right there. So that's Mr. Bold in his younger days.
All right.
Right there. I appreciate you putting up with that. And then we talked about the Aleutian Islands, Coach.
Yes.
So that's me on the Aleutian Islands. Again, almost the far tip of the Aleutian Islands. We did an operation there. They had actually, prior to us going up there in the late 60s or early 70s, they detonated an underground nuclear weapon on that island.
Wow.
So I stood on the crater. The island had recovered.
Okay.
You never know, other than a little depression, that they detonated an underground nuke on that island.
Huh.
Same island.
And with that, is there any like ill effects from the nuke being exploded? Any concern of?
I don't know, Coach. You see
radiation or anything?
You see me 5 days a week, so you tell me whether or not I'm suffering from any ill effects.
Yeah.
That,
Okay.
that might explain a lot of misconduct
It might.
at the office.
It might.
Hey, not too many people know that, man.
Yeah.
So that's a World War II chapel right there. That the island was occupied in World War II, and they flew bombers because the Japanese did invade and land on several of the islands in the Aleutians. So I never thought about whether or not I, because of work, how I am. I don't know if I have ill effects. This was when we were on Okinawa for 6 months. We did what was called a float, and we went from Okinawa down to the Philippines. And we were on the USS Dubuque, and I have that marked. USS Dubuque is right there.
Yep.
So this guy is on the Dubuque, and then this is called undersea replenishment, or UNREP. So they're taking on fuel from this oiler right here. I think this is an oiler.
Okay.
Let me get my finger. There you go. That's an oiler right there.
Okay.
That's in the South Pacific. All right. Let's see what else we got there. Got to go on that same float after we left the Philippines. We got to go to Hong Kong. And this is me on the Hong Kong side of the border with communist China. So there's a fence there, and there's communist China there. This is the harbor at Hong Kong. So I got to go to Hong Kong. That's the New York City of the Far East.
Okay. Yeah.
We were according to what I was told back then, Coach, we were the first American ship to actually pull up to the dock.
Really?
Normally an American ship would dock out in the water.
Yeah.
Out here. And the guys on board ship would have to take a ferry or a launch in. So we tied up to the pier right there, I believe.
Wow.
All right. So this was us coming in and
So
I'm sure. Go ahead.
You made history then, huh?
I believe so. That's
Wow.
Again, that's what we were told.
Yeah.
And Hong Kong now, that's 1980, 81, 82 time frame. That was probably 1982.
Okay.
And that skyline there, I'm sure, is much different today.
Oh yeah.
So there's, again, that's tying up to the dock right there.
Yeah.
Some sands.
And
That's
then-
the harbor there at Hong Kong.
okay.
One of the things that the military allows you to do when you're in, you get 30 days paid vacation right off the bat.
Okay.
And so in between duty stations, we had leave time. So one of the opportunities that I had, I was able to go down to Australia. So that's me on the steps of the Sydney Opera House
Right.
there. That's Mr. Bold right there,
Yeah.
sitting on the steps of the Sydney Opera House. And what I tell people, Coach, is my trip, and it was my roommate, we were both going down to the recruit depot in San Diego. So he and I flew from California, stayed overnight in Hawaii, flew from Hawaii to the American Samoan Islands and an island called Pago Pago, Pago, space Pago. It's called Pago Pago. We refueled there, and then we flew from Pago Pago to north of Sydney. So that one-way trip only cost us $25.
Oh
and we got an Air Force box lunch with that. And then we flew on the same aircraft a week later on the way back, $25 and a box lunch.
Oh
So
my
I did
gosh.
$50 round trip down to Sydney, Australia, and 2 box lunches.
Yeah, that would happen today.
No. Well, in the military, maybe.
Maybe.
And the cost of the 25 probably went up.
Yeah.
And then this is my final duty station was at the recruit depot in San Diego. And that's me. That's Mr. Bold right there playing second base.
Oh yeah.
And that plane is taking off from San Diego's airport.
Wow.
So the recruit depot shares a fence line with the San Diego International Airport.
Wow.
And I know you can't tell it here, but I'm wearing my Steeler cap.
Are you? Yeah. I can't tell, but yeah, nice. Representing.
So thanks to your audience for putting up with my photos.
Oh, absolutely. That's
about it for the military. I went back out for my roommate's wedding back in '84. I came out in '84. Drove across country both times from Virginia to California and California back.
Yeah, I know you've told me stories before of some of your drives in California. You said it was some of the amazing, the most amazing sights you've ever seen, just taking drives out in California.
So this may have been before your time, Coach. '81, driving across country, AM, FM radio only. I drove across, 2 other lieutenants and I in a convoy. We drove from the northeast corner of Texas over to the western corner, El Paso, AM/FM radio only. That's a boring drive. Texas is long, east to west, and I did it again, west to east. Twice I've driven across the state of Texas.
How long is it? Do you know?
Not off the top of my head, but it's long.
It's probably 10 hours.
I don't know if you can't do that in
eight hours?
do that in 8 hours. Yes, and both times we may have stopped in the middle of the state.
Okay.
I know that we stayed overnight outside of Dallas on the first one, and then went from Dallas. We watched the 1981 Super Bowl in Abilene, Texas. That's what I remember.
Nice.
At a Holiday Inn in Abilene, Texas. We got separated. Two of us got through a stoplight. One guy did not. We got separated there. And this is before cell phones, Coach.
Yeah.
So we had to call back to his parents' house in Virginia to tell him where we were. And we had driven out to Abilene, Texas, about 100 miles east of Dallas. He stayed in Dallas. He drove out to meet us at the Abilene. He didn't talk to us for a day or two.
Oh my gosh.
We should have gone back to the last place that we were together. Yeah. And we didn't do that.
Yeah.
His funny story was he did a U-turn in front of a Dallas cop. He did like an 8-lane U-turn in downtown Dallas. And there was a cop sitting right there in the median strip. Yeah. The cop was too surprised, he said, for what he did.
Took him by surprise that much, huh?
Got to see the Grand Canyon up close on that trip out. We stopped at the Grand Canyon. That day, when we left the Grand Canyon, Flagstaff, Arizona, there was ice and snow. This was January of 81.
Okay.
So on our final day going to California, it was from Flagstaff to north of San Diego. We hit ice and snow in Flagstaff. Excuse me. We hit a sandstorm in Barstow, California that sandblasted the 3 windshields. I had pock marks across my entire windshield. Yeah. So I don't know if you've ever been in a sandstorm.
No.
Nasty. Yeah. And then coming down through the San Bernardino Mountains, the fog was so thick. You hear people talking about how thick the fog was, zero visibility. Well, this fog was on the deck, as we said. It was down there where you could barely make out the taillights of the car in front of you. There was the 3 of us going in convoy. And the guy in the lead, his speedometer was broken. And he's flying at 70 miles an hour. I'm in my 4-door Chevy Malibu, right on his rear end. That was scary. That was scary.
Wow. So we
survived.
You went through some of the elements there then, huh?
You got it. Wow. I think every element that you could have that day.
Yeah.
We did.
Right. Sandstorm.
Except a hurricane, maybe. We didn't have a hurricane.
Yeah. Wow. Great stories, Tom. I appreciate those stories. Those are awesome. And the pictures, you said thanks for bearing with, but anytime you get a chance to see some old pictures like that, you don't get to see them too often anymore. So it's fun to see those. You making history in Hong Kong, all that stuff. That's great.
The one of the things I didn't show is I got to go on that trip across down to Australia. We stopped in Hawaii. Got to go out to Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
And my wife, daughter, and I, we just did a trip out to Hawaii in October. And we went back we were able, fortunately, to get out there to see the Arizona.
Yeah.
So I had photos from 1983, and was trying to replicate where I was standing on the Arizona Memorial there. Got close, but just amazing to do that again. How many years removed?
Right. Yeah, I was able to go to Pearl Harbor when I went out to Hawaii a couple of years ago as well. That definitely glad we decided to do that. That was one of the most humbling and very. Just amazing sights, amazing stories that you could imagine. So definitely glad I was able to do that for sure.
Good for you, Coach. So you actually got onto the memorial, is that correct?
No, the memorial out on the water.
Yeah,
that's what. No, so we did not get to go on it. We did not get to. We went on a boat that went around it. I can't remember the reasoning why we weren't allowed to go on it at that time. They might have been doing some kind of renovation or something, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. So I didn't actually get to go on it, but we went, circled around it on a ferry.
Very good.
Yep. So to wrap up with the Veterans Day talk, finishing off with that, since that's where we started, we'll go back to that. Has other than the ceremonies that you've been a part of, has there been any other memories you've had from people doing anything for you on Veterans Day, or just as people just saying thank you? Or Anything?
That's pretty much it, Coach. Because I don't, other than wearing, as you can see, I'm wearing my Marine Corps cover here. I don't walk up to people and say I'm a veteran.
Yeah.
If asked, I bring that up. We have several employees at work that have been very, very gracious each Veterans Day and coming up and thanking me for my service. Now we have 2 veterans at work now, and I always point out if there was another veteran there, please go say, your thank yous to X. So that's good. And again, I don't think veterans as a whole, other than putting a label or a sticker on your car, wearing a hat like this, we just don't go out profusely stating that we're veterans. But we do appreciate, I do, and I'm a young veteran, not the youngest type. The ones that need it now are the ones that have been over there now in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and in the old timers.
Yeah.
So I always try to make sure that I thank any of them whenever I see them or able to identify them.
Right.
What the businesses do, I think it's great, especially for the old timers. I've beat on politicians when I could, saying that I think that the state could do more. And I think a veteran should get a discount on state stuff across the board, not just on Veterans Day.
Okay.
So, for example, I think I should get a veteran, not me. Well, obviously, I have some self-interest there. I should get a discount on my driver's license.
Okay.
I should get a discount from the state on my registration.
Yeah.
Anything that the state could do, no matter what small token. And again, especially for the old timers.
Yeah. It's all just small tokens of appreciation, like you said.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said. And that's how they can do it. That's how, people can show appreciation for, and again, going back to where we started earlier, we're able to do this because of the veterans that came before that.
Right.
One of the definitions of a veteran that I've seen through the internet or readings that I've done is a veteran's willing to write a check to either the citizens of the United States up to and including the cost of his or her own life. So that's the kind of check that we write as a veteran. There's the kids that went in, and I wanted to bring this up, Coach, and thank you for the opportunity. The kids that went in after 9/11, they were the real deal, because that was combat. Those kids that were going in, Marines, Army infantry, they were going to combat.
Yeah.
Almost guaranteed.
Yeah.
So they were the real deal, and I admire them for that. I've told any of the ones that I ran into, I said, you guys are the real deal, because it was combat.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Crazy stuff, but good, humbling stuff as well. You said it, that nobody necessarily does anything big for you, but I could tell even just a simple thank you truly does mean a lot. So
yes,
for anybody that takes the time to go up to you on Veterans Day and say thank you, it does. It means a lot to you.
Yes, absolutely right. And to other veterans.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mr. Bold can only speak for himself, but you say it correctly that those old timers really do appreciate it.
Yeah,
they really do. They really do.
Yeah. Yep. All right, Tom. Let's finish off with some bright stories.
Okay, I have one for you.
All right, you want to go first?
I will go first if you will allow me.
Absolutely, go ahead.
Our trip, as I mentioned, my wife, daughter, and I made a trip to Hawaii last month. We had some issues with lodging, and one of the supervisors at the hotel where we had an issue went above and beyond in staying with us until our situation was rectified. So she didn't have to do it.
Right.
She went above and beyond, and again stayed well past her end of day time,
right,
to make sure that we got taken care of in one form or another. So that's again a human interest story. Somebody looking out for you.
Yeah.
She could have left, but she stayed with us.
Yeah, her shift was over. She could have said, "I'm out of here. Good luck."
Correct.
But
yep.
She instead
it turned me over to the next supervisor.
Yeah.
So
wow, nice.
And the flight attendants were very nice too. Both flights. I don't know if you remember your flight coach, but they're long.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yep. We did Dallas nonstop.
Yeah, we went from California out to Hawaii. So
yeah, that cuts a little bit of time off.
It sure does. It sure does.
So that's my bright story.
Very good. Very good. I appreciate that, Tom. That's good. It's good to hear that people were considerate, thinking of you,
Yes,
just trying to help out best they can.
correct.
All right, so I got one. Let me pull it up here. So I had somebody share a story. So I guess it's from a group of teachers, and or not a group of teachers, but a group of people in a school community. So like parents in a school community, and they have this either like site or this group that they all communicate in. And sometimes it's just, people complaining or doing whatever, talking about stuff that's going on. Well, there was this one occasion where this woman who's a mother, I guess, going through a hard time or whatever, and her kids were in the choir or band or choir, and she kind of just said, would there be anyone who is not using a uniform that maybe their kids could use, that she just wasn't able to get uniforms for them or whatever they needed. And instantly people stepped up in the comments right away and said, what's your PayPal or Venmo or whatever it is, I'll send you money for their uniforms. Get you mouthpiece for the horn for the one kid, for her French horn or whatever, whatever the instrument was. So instantly we just had an outflow of support for this mother who just could not financially support her kids in the band or choir, and just the outpour of support from these other parents or other people in this community to just step up and help in any way that they could. So
Excellent.
it's sometimes you get nervous, asking for help, and because you just don't know how people are gonna take it, or you don't want to look or feel desperate, I guess you could say. But just knowing that there's people out there there's people out there that are willing to help. So you just sometimes you have to ask for help. Sometimes you have to put your pride aside and say, I'm going through tough times. I could use some help for my kids, for my friend, for my family, whatever the case may be. Just put yourself out there and just say, I'm unable to, would anybody be able to help me? And there's just so many people out there there's so many people that are out there willing to consider others over themselves. They're taking that same value we've been talking about today, that are willing to think of others, as well. So I really appreciate that story. That's a good one. Absolutely good one. Just people reaching out, being a community, being supportive of each other, and especially when it comes to kids and their dreams. You don't ever want to have them feel defeated or unable to pursue their dreams or their interests. You always want to be able to support them and what they want to do. So that's an absolutely great story to hear, that people were willing to do that for that mother.
Very good.
Yep. And then the last one I've got wasn't really necessarily submitted as a bright story, but just in talking with my mother, I was over their house the other day, and just in talk, you were talking about how their neighbor, he recently had a stroke, and obviously isn't really allowed to do much, and so he normally cuts his own grass. He normally takes care of his own yard work and all that. And so realizing that that he had a stroke and really isn't supposed to be doing that, my dad took it upon himself to go over and cut his whole yard, do trimming, blow the driveway, everything, kind of just take care of it for him. And you know what? He didn't do it for any reason. He didn't do it for the recognition or anything. I don't even, my mom said, I don't even know if the neighbor knew who or what, who did it, what happened. I don't think he was even aware that it happened. And so my dad just took it on himself to just take care of a neighbor's yard that wasn't able to at that time. So like I said, I don't know that she was necessarily meaning for it to be a bright story, but it is 100% a bright story. It's just thinking of others. Again, just the same thing, going back to it. just thinking of others, over yourself. And my dad had heart surgery maybe two years now. So, he knows what it's like. He knows what it's like to have physical, ailments, and have, just to be able to do that for somebody. It put a smile on my face and warmed my heart for sure to know.
Absolutely. Kudos to your dad, Coach. And I can see where your character comes from.
Yeah.
It starts at home, man.
It does.
There you go.
Yeah, like we talked about, you getting a lot of your values, and your personality from military training. A lot of people get it from, like I said, a lot of people get it from their raising, their childhood, their upbringing, from their parents. And I certainly got a lot of mine from my parents.
Yeah, very good point, Coach. And that's where mine started too.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
And then
I don't want to say you didn't get it from your parents. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, talking a lot about your military. You got, Yep. All right, Tom, I think that'll do it. All
right, Coach, you're the man.
You as well.
Thanks again for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
You bet. I really appreciate it as well, Tom. Always enjoy your stories. Always enjoy your insight and your pictures and your fun memories. Always a blast.
Hey, I hope Mr. Bold's appearance keeps your ratings up there.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good.
All right. You have yourself a good day, Coach.
All right. You as well. All right, guys. Appreciate you hanging out. I hope you enjoyed Tom's stories. And again, it is Veterans Day this coming Thursday. So if you could take the moment just to, if you're aware, like Tom said, if you're aware of any veterans, take just a quick moment just to thank them. Maybe listen to a story or two that they would like to share, and just show a little appreciation to all the veterans out there. And think about all that their sacrifice, meant for you and your family, and just for this country as a whole. So don't take it for granted. Take a moment just to appreciate and think about everything that has happened in the past. So otherwise, have a wonderful and bright week, guys. Enjoy, continue to be bright, continue to be kind, continue to be considerate, and just live each day to the best that you can. Keep trying to do for others, not necessarily more than yourself, but at least in tandem with yourself. Continue to do for others, and we'll keep doing our thing. Guys, take care. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next time.